Okay. We don't seem to have anything here for public comments, but we will open it for public comments and questions at this time. Yes.
Kathy Cotton, what's the hourly billing rate difference between Zashin and Rich and Deemer and Associates?
Don't know offhand. I don't think it's substantially different, but I don't know offhand. We'd find that out for you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mike, Ron Cotman. I believe you reported 2 weeks ago that the trustees have entered into an agreement with the fire department union for an initial contract. Could you please review the terms of that contract and tell the audience what is the cost impact of that contract agreement, cost impact to the township?
Okay, I can do that. I don't have the contract with you right now. They have been delivered here. They're not signed by the board yet. At least I haven't signed it yet.
No.
Okay, then, so they're not signed off yet, but we can certainly do that. I can't do it instantaneously.
It doesn't have to be signed off to be able to tell us. You've reported that you reached agreement, and in fact, you've discharged, I believe, 2 people who were dual employees of the road department and the fire department, or at least you gave them an ultimatum by which they would either resign or be discharged. And I think as part of that, you indicated that that was part of the contract agreement that was reached with the union. So what percent increase, what additional health care, if any, changes might be available to anybody that is represented by the fire department union, any other benefits, any other policy-related changes that the township has agreed upon with the union representatives acting on behalf of those employees. Certainly you must know what percent increase you've agreed to.
No, well, that's a rather long shopping list. I cannot give you an answer right now, but
Pick one thing that you do remember, if you could.
I'll defer that and we'll give you a little
One
answer.
of them was there was a negotiated change in regards to the number of years between step raises and different promotions. So I'd have to ask John Wardland to give me the breakdown of the different people and their tenure to see what that difference is. And I think it was only a couple of $1,000 difference. So the officers do get a promotion faster, was one of the negotiated agreements, I believe, too. I'm not sure what the specific pay increase offhand was. I can find that out, and we'll definitely give you a summary report next week. But I do know that some of the languages that talks about future pay raises would be consistent with what's negotiated with the police department union.
The same or consistent?
The same, I believe. I'll check the exact language.
I believe they call it Me Too.
Yeah.
So whatever the police got, the fire would get the same.
So what is the period of time over which this contract is in effect?
Roughly September 1st of this year through August 31st of 2015.
3-year contract.
3-year. Does it address a wage schedule change for 2013?
It will be the same as is negotiated with the police department. So at this time, we don't have one yet. But they are going to mimic whatever is negotiated with the police contract.
There was a retro 2.5% wage increase is in there from January 1st, 2012 to current. And
In addition to what they've received already?
what do you mean?
Did they get an increase this year? Gosh, you know, I feel like I'm pulling teeth.
I'm not understanding your question, so I'm.
Well, I'm trying to understand what the township agreed to do for the fire rescue employees that is the result of negotiations that have been going on, I don't know, for what, a year and a half?
No,
Well, a year.
I'd have to go check the date, I don't know how long.
Let me ask one last thing about the union agreement. How much have you paid Zashin and Rich for the work that they've done negotiating with the fire union representative?
Okay.
I think we received $16,000, 14,000.
Somewhere between 14 and 16, we don't have the exact number right now.
It's around 14,005 or something.
You're right.
Yes,
It sounds like you're going to hire a secretary for the road department.
yes,
No doubt it, he probably does need the help, but why don't you utilize the administrative assistant instead of hiring a secretary for him?
That motion actually was tabled, I don't know if you were here at the time.
Pardon me?
That motion was tabled, I don't know if you came in
Did
late,
not.
or were you here already?
Yeah, why did you table it anyway, Ken?
about what, 7:02?
Pardon me?
About 7:02 this evening,
No, why?
because trustee Radke had asked for full board.
So I'm asking Mr. Radke, why did you ask for a full board?
Basically, I'm just trying to be consistent with my attitude and approach to managing the township's business. I was back in April that I know Mr. Peeler, and apologize that this is being brought up again, but he had asked for some assistance, and I had talked to my fellow trustees, and I said, what about we could make some additional use of the board's administrative assistant's time? Talked to Mr. Peeler, and the board was in support of that, and long story short, nothing really happened on that. And so instead of throwing people and money at a problem, I think we should look internally within our organization to handle things, and that didn't get done. So instead of putting the motion on to hire somebody, I'd ask the chair if he would just table that motion.
It can't be that difficult for the road department and the administrative assistant to share server or whatever. I mean, I'm sure that a college student can do that.
Thanks for your input. Any other
Well,
questions?
yeah, thank you.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm still confused. Ken, why did you ask it to be tabled?
Because I want the full board to be present when they're making a decision on that.
Okay. That's the reason.
yes,
At the last meeting, you voted to enter into a judgment entry, and the agreement said that it was in the township's best interest to settle the action. So my question is, why, can you explain why you believe it was in the township's best interest to settle that and enter into a judgment entry?
because we didn't feel it was worth going to court and fighting over it. It was a small amount.
But we don't pay for the county prosecutor to do.
No.
I mean, it would be no cost to the township, is
No,
that
no
correct?
cost. It's
But,
just-
but you didn't feel it was,
Correct. We didn't feel like it was worth going to court over it,
why not?
because we didn't. I'm not gonna go out and explain everything, but
Well, I guess I'd like a little more explanation, and here's why, because the applicant filled out a zoning permit, and the zoning inspector denied it.
yes.
The applicant appeared in front of Chester Township's Board of Zoning Appeals and asked for a variance, and the BZA denied it.
Yes,
And so, all
What you're
those
describing
steps
is called
denied
due
it,
process.
and then you're allowing it, so I guess I'd ask for a little more reasoning into why you think it was in the township's best interest. when all these other groups didn't think so.
Well, the zoning inspector has absolutely no authority to grant something beyond it. The BZA does what they do, and once that's done, due process, says they can file in court, and then the board of trustees make a decision.
I think when they, part of that language is the township's best interest is part of just legalese language. My own personal assessment in regards to the property was the physical location of the accessory building, the distance from the road, it's located around a curve, there's trees that are in front there, the materials that he's currently storing outside, he agreed to storing inside. The neighbors also have accessory buildings, the lay of the land, so it was not something that I felt was inconsistent with the neighborhood.
So in accordance with the agreement, do you agree that it was in the township's best interest to enter into that agreement?
That's the language of the document, and that's what we agreed to, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mike Ron Cotman, I think, I don't know what percent of the Board of Zoning Appeals cases have to do with accessory buildings, but I gotta believe it's a relatively high percent. People typically would like to have a bigger building and oftentimes a taller building than the current zoning resolution allows. Now, when is the township going to address the accessory building allowances so that, you know, if this particular accessory building is okay with you guys, you know, if a person that was turned down by the BZA, if they had gone the next step of the due process and hired a local attorney to represent them, maybe they would have gotten it's in the best interest of the township. So rather than continue to be arbitrary, once it gets to the Board of Trustees and do something that's different than what our zoning resolution currently permits, why don't you change the zoning, or at least look at the possibility of changing the current rules regarding accessory buildings?
That is the function of the zoning commission, to review and look at those things. They've got a long list of things they're looking at now, items, whatever. They will eventually get to that, I'm sure. It has been brought up to them before.
Mike, an alternative, and I hope you know this, the Board of Trustees can also initiate a change to the zoning resolution. And if this board feels that it's in the best interest of the township to be looking at variations to the current rule, why don't you, rather than be arbitrary, as you just, I believe you just were, you have reasons, okay, the neighbor didn't complain, the neighbor has accessory building, you can't see it from the road, blah, blah, blah. Maybe people that have bigger lots ought to be allowed to have bigger buildings,
Perhaps.
as an example. Would you please look into it?
You find looking into it. I am aware that the board can initiate those actions. We have chosen not to. That's in the bailiwick of the zoning commission, and they are aware of it. Our zoning inspector is, of course, in communication with both the BZA and the ZC, so they are aware of each other's progress in cases.
You know what, Mike? If the Board of Trustees thinks that a review of the accessory building section of our zoning resolution, a review of that is important, I believe a note or a call from the board, from the chairman, from you, to Margaret Muelling, who is the chairman of the zoning commission, I believe that would move it up to a higher priority on their to-do activity. You asked them to work on parks. And so they worked on parks for a year and a half. So it moved it to the top. So why not ask them to work on accessory buildings?
They're still working on parks and others, and I've asked them to work on other things that I consider vital. They are aware of it. It has been brought up before.
According to their minutes, and this will be the last thing I say about accessory buildings, but I believe the attorney that represented the person on, what is it, Cedar Acres, that you approved
Correct.
his request, I believe that attorney has gone to the zoning commission, according to their minutes, and requested the zoning commission to review the accessory building provisions. Because he also knows that this is a continuing problem for people that live in this community.
As you should know, yes. Yes.
Kathy, comment. Can you please share with us the other priority issues that you have asked the zoning commission to work on?
I've asked them to look at election signs, as I believe there's a problem with that. I've asked them to look at the parks, as parks are not defined in our zoning resolution at all, have not been for 200 years. The only location in all of Chester that is not defined in our zoning resolution is what we call the Parkside Park. And I think that is something that has been overlooked for 200 years, and it should be corrected. You had a question, sir?
George Zender, Chester. Can I stand up?
Please, yes.
Okay, I'd like to talk about the engineering study for the cemetery.
Do you have a question on it?
Well, I actually have a comment about having them look at making a natural burial sites on the cemetery. I have some full handouts, may I approach them?
Please, yes.
Okay. I got 3 here. And here's 3 others.
Natural burial sites are,
Natural burial center. What this is proposal is that when they look at the engineering study, that they look at natural burials. That would be, what it is basically not using concrete vaults, not using steel casket, but using biodegradable casket. And you notice in there is that there's Foxfield Preserve, which is a preserve down in Wilmot, Ohio, which is a natural burial site preserve. And what this does is basically, you need another one?
I have duplications of the 3 pages of what should be.
No, there's back side. Okay. I have others if people want.
No, you're fine. I'm aware of these, but go ahead.
And I was wondering whether that engineering group could look at having natural burial in the expansion area. The only place you can get naturally buried is Wilmot, Ohio, which is some 50, 70 miles from here. It's a new way of looking at how to put people to rest. And it's also much more cost effective. You don't have to pay for the vault, you don't have to pay for the casket. It's actually better for groundwater and other things like that. And I won't go theologically, I'm for that way too, dust to dust type of situation, I'm a pastor. So that's why I'd like to, see if that could be looked at by the engineering group and also I heard there's a bat problem. You have to worry about the bats up
The
in that area.
Indiana bat?
What?
The Indiana bat.
The Indiana bat, because this way you can leave everything basically the same in that area. You can take out some of the shrubs and stuff so they can be buried, but you can get over that hurdle for the environment. So it's a way of saving 2 things, and I think it's the way we might want to look at that expansion, because I think we could also attract people to be buried here in Chestwood. Not a bad place to live, not a bad place to die either.
Okay. I don't believe that this sort of thing is within the scope of Superior Valley Engineering, what we're asking them to look at. The concept, of course, I'm not exactly sure which department we would approach about that. I would think that'd be a county, probably health department first.
Well, the county health department basically said Actually, in Geauga County, you can bury anywhere. I can bury them in the backyard,
I understand that.
which I won't do, but you
It
can,
kind of depreciates the property value for the next owner.
maybe, depends. So, but I'm saying, I think this is a way, and this I'm trying to talk to the trustees about, having this looked at as something different than just the old green lawn type expansion type cemetery. And I think it's a way of, one, being a little more with it. Because actually burials are going down because of cremation. So actually, this is a way of getting more people in here.
Choose upon barrels have always been going down, but okay.
Okay, but as I said, I think it's a way of looking at a different alternative than just, you know, the.
It is a different alternative, you're correct. And I will contact the county about it. I don't think the type of burial is particularly what CVE is looking into for their engineering study.
They're probably
It's
looking for water drainage and
more
stuff.
about the expansion and all of that.
But you have to look at water problems there.
I understand.
And that's part of the
Understand.
situations.
It would be a major change, which I'll look into, but
Might have an economic benefit if
It
there's
may
less
well.
site work that needs to be done, so. Possibility.
I just don't know enough to give you any kind of a.
Well, I'll talk to Mike Henry from Chagrin Valley just to see if they have some experience.
Because I have done some
Okay.
work with it, with my son in New Mexico as an engineer, and I just think it might be a way that Chester might do something different than what everybody else is doing, and
Let me look into it and see what I can dig up from the county and,
Another pun there?
yeah, another fun. Another fun. But I thank you for bringing it to our attention.
okay, thank you.
Hey, George, can you make sure you send the log so I get your name spelled right for the minutes and everything?
There.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, Ron Cotman. What is the status of things on the cemetery project? Are the specifications reviewed and signed off by the board at this point?
Mike Henry is the guy from Chagrin Valley Engineering. The bid specification had previously been reviewed by legal counsel. The one change that was being made was adding a project or a construction observer and a construction administrator into the specification, so that would be a cost or responsibility. The cost would be the responsibility of the contractor, so that's the one change that is going in there. As long as the work is done between September 30th and April 1st, then there would be no need to be marking the trees and making adjustments in regards to the site work that's being done. So we're 95% of the way there after the motion that was passed this evening. Mike Henry said that he will meet with the board just to make sure that we got everything buttoned up and be able to go out for bid and do that. So we'll forward the one paragraph, the prosecutor's been copied on that paragraph that's been added to the spec.
Well, I noticed that you set the bid opening date. Normally, you also announce or have a resolution that sets the advertising dates and you allow a certain amount of money for advertising. This $1,000, does this include the cost for advertising for bids?
Yeah, the administrative assistant actually talked to Mike Henry, and he said you should only need to really advertise in the Geauga Maple Leaf because there's a service that extracts those types of bids, puts them on the internet, so all contractors essentially become aware of them just by advertising in one of the more significant local papers. So that takes care of, and I asked Mike Henry, says, does that give you an adequate population? People would be exposed to it. I said, absolutely. As I also asked, is November 1st sufficient time, presuming that we advertise on the 18th and the 25th, because there are some legal time requirements that need to be met, which was part of the reason for engaging CVE services for this step in the process there. So those legal timeframes will be met by advertising on the 18th and the 25th of October.
Are we still using Chagrin River Watersheds or whoever it was that was involved in some of these projects in a oversight capacity or soil and water or whoever it's been? Is Chagrin Valley Engineering the only outside party that's working with the township on this project?
Correct. At this point in time, yes. Because I think all the wetlands delineation, the securing of the permits with the Corps and all that other stuff had already previously been done, included in the specification.
Okay.
Yes.
Hi, under new business, motion number
Name,
5.
please.
Ben Paletta,
Okay.
motion 582. What is APA Cleveland? And I see that you're attending, Mark Reeling, who is on the zoning board, and Steve Averill, who is our zoning inspector. One, what is the APA Cleveland? And two, why would you be attending?
The APA is a annual thing, it's been going on for a great number of years, we've always attended it. We typically invite all members of the zoning commission and the BZA to attend it. It also has to do with planning, and so far, there's just the three of us who are going.
Okay, point being that you are now trustee, I know you're a former zoning inspector, but if this, why would you be attending?
Because it also covers some planning aspects.
What does that mean? What kind of planning?
What kind of planning? Interesting question. What do they have here? We've got the legal, the comprehensive plan. Well, also talks about how to answer questions.
You need some work on that one.
Kind of put my foot down, okay. Yes.
Yes. Why are you the only one going then, and not Mr. Radke or Mrs. Caputo?
I'm afraid you'd have to ask them that question.
Why aren't you going, Mr. Radke? Aren't you interested in planning, or what?
I expect that the zoning people, the attendees will be bringing information back. I reviewed the agenda and didn't think that, based upon some of the stuff, that it was absolutely necessary for me to go.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Ron Cotman. I had wanted to provide you just a little piece of information before you voted on dumping Hanslick and going 100% with Sash and Rich. Are you aware that the township has, over the years, used different legal counsel for the road department negotiations, different from the police department negotiations? They haven't both been done by Hanslick.
Well, the board felt that it's better to go with a single firm.
Okay, so that's, okay, so I guess you thought, perhaps you thought that Hanslick was doing both contract negotiations? Because it seemed to work just fine, and it sounded like the police chief was happy to continue to utilize Brad.
It seems that in court actions anymore, details are becoming more and more refined. It seemed like an undue risk to have two different people, two different firms interpreting it, two different points of view, if you will, and we have had a problem in the past where conflicting interests have not served us well, and I won't go into the details of legal opinions. This seemed the best.
I don't know what you just said, but I suppose you do.
Okay, thank you. No other questions then? We'll close the meeting tonight at 7:51.